Hello, everybody, and welcome to Successfully Motivating Taproom Staff. My name is Andrew Copeland with Secret Hopper. We have helped over 500 breweries nationwide make their taprooms more profitable. Following this conversation, I'd like to connect one-on-one with each of you to better understand your current pain points and work together to find ways to make your life not only easier, but also drive greater success in your taproom. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat in a minute. Would love for you to click that. But today I'm joined by several taproom representatives across the country to provide you with actionable tips to successfully motivate your staff. Now, let's meet them. And Jacob, you are to the right of me. You get to go first.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew. Hey, everyone. My name is Jacob Virgil. I'm with NoDa Brewing Company here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Our taproom team specifically is about 11 folks. A random fact about me, Andrew primed this, and I didn't think of it. I've cut off 3 of my fingers, yet they are back on my hand. That's a long story that we can talk about another time.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to ask about that over a pint. That is random, Jacob. Thanks for being here.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Grace Cooper. I'm from Seventh Sun Brewing in Columbus, Ohio. We also own Antiques on High as well as Getaway Brewing in Columbus. We have about 60 taproom employees overlapping our 3 locations. And a random fact about me is before I started working for the company, I got to leverage my creative abilities and start painting murals. So now working in the tap rooms, I get to be surrounded by all my art, which is really cool.
That is awesome. And how many fingers have you cut off?
Luckily, I need them all for painting.
I definitely want to see a pic of one of your murals someday.
Absolutely.
And let's work our way around the table.
Hi, I'm Mara Hardman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the marketing manager for Seattle Cider, and I oversee Seattle Cider Taproom and now the kitchen at Seattle Cider Taproom. I've been in the industry for about 8 years now. I have a background in natural grocery foods and nonprofit work. Interestingly enough, I also still have all of my digits. But Grace, I love that you do murals. I actually teach art classes sometimes in our tap room. I've been teaching Paint Your Pet classes, which have been an absolute blast. So we might have to connect on that.
Yeah. Instantly, you guys are so much more interesting than me.
Jacob, no art classes?
No, you don't want to see my art. It's pretty bad. There's a reason why I have somebody else's art behind me.
Well, I appreciate everybody diving here today. So I want to set the tone with some data from the 2025 Workplace Satisfaction Report. This is the partnership between Craft Beer Professionals, my other hat, and Craft Beer Advisory Services. So it's a yearly survey, and in 2022, when we asked the question to respondents, I am happy to work at my brewery, 93% of front of house staff agreed or strongly agreed with that statement. This year, in 2025, that number has dropped to 77% who agree. As taproom managers and owners, everybody listening, you have the difficult task of not only creating the most memorable experience for your guests, but also for your teams. So everybody on the panel today, I'd love to kind of just talk about that and what's the problem? What challenges have you faced in motivating your team? Let's talk really general right now with regard to over the past couple of years. And Jacob, I'm going to throw that one to you first.
Yeah, for sure. For us, it's been something that I imagine most businesses, especially a lot of small businesses, have faced the last couple of years. Is the cost of everything has gotten more expensive. That is true for us as well as our team, which makes it difficult when our team is coming to us and saying, "Hey, we're wanting more compensation." It's tough to do that when the taproom may not necessarily be doing as well as it was a couple of years ago. So we've really had to get creative, and we can talk more about that in how we are working to motivate our team when we're not always able to just throw money at it, so to speak. But I think for our team, that's been the biggest thing is everything, whether it's groceries to cost of living across the board, has gotten more expensive. And being in the service industry where their paycheck is largely driven by volume coming in, people coming in, going out, that has also gone down. So we've had to work with them on that.
To piggyback off of Jacob, I think the educational part for our taproom members, obviously, they are the sales force front for most of our customers. So educating them on what exactly goes into the brewery process, but also with the ever evolving business, what goes into now making coffee, now making RTD ready to drink cocktails, and now our newly introduced THC cocktails, it's been very important to keep the staff involved in the production part of it, as well as like feedback. Obviously, they love taste testing, so that's one avenue that we're able to tap into. But just keeping them informed of the education about the product that they are selling has been the best part to get people to be involved, but also just be able to sell it.
Would you say that's stressful for your team sometimes having to retain so much knowledge about not just beer, but all these other products?
It definitely can be a struggle because it is a lot of information on just outside of just the brewing process, but flavor profile, collaborations, all the local companies that we partner with. It's a lot of information on top of just your daily job. So trying to keep them motivated by keeping things interesting and constantly changing has been a struggle. Yes.
Yeah,
Maura, how about
kind of
you?
piggybacking on what you're talking about. What we've found that can be kind of motivating for our staff around keeping up with all of the many things that we have in our tap room, just aside from our cider, is finding, one or two really staunch advocates. So one of our longest standing bartenders comes from a beer background and just is really passionate about beer. Of our 32 taps, we have about 12 of them that we keep on a regular rotation of local beers. And he's taken up our beer ordering. And so he's, learning about that, tasting through things. We actually have a regular running TikTok and Reels series that we call Dave Drinks Beer. And we interview Dave about what he's drinking that week and what he's excited about. And so, actually all of our staff are watching this, hearing what Dave has to say about it. He's got a little theme song. It's pretty funny. You'll have to check it out sometime at Seattle Cider Taproom. But, finding folks who really are excited about one particular thing, and then, they're sharing that with the rest of the bar team. They're sharing that with the rest of our staff. And I think that can be a big help. But it is. I mean, I'll talk about this as we get to like further questions, but we've had a crazy amount of evolution in our tap room over the last year and a half. And we actually were part of that, slowing down in the beer business, where we ended up having to close our brewery because it just didn't make sense to have a brewery and a cidery and a tap room. And that allowed us to focus more on the tap room and the cidery. And that's been a great choice, but it was a lot of change in a very short amount of time.
And it's hard to get your team on board when you're having so much moving parts all at once, I imagine.
Change is hard, and we've seen some of those pain points. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to please our customers, please our staff. And I want to cite the workplace satisfaction report again, because I think this will lead to a fun follow-up. When we ask the factors that are currently contributing to their happiness, the top 3 responses were coworkers, a welcoming environment, and base wages and salary. When we asked the question about the factors that will influence their future happiness, the top 3 were base pay raises, growth opportunities, and increased benefits. So for the 3 of you, I'd love to know, how are you best understanding your staff and their needs and expectations for not just right now, but ahead into the future?
Yeah, I've got a really groundbreaking answer. We ask them. But jokes aside, I mean, that is a very, very important thing, like sitting down and having conversations with the team. So we're actively going through an annual review process that we do annually. And what that looks like is talking about how things are currently going, but also forward looking and like, what do you want? What makes you happy? Where are you wanting to go with the brewery? And that is just an annual process. But each time any of our managers touch base with their direct reports, a smaller version of that conversation should be happening every time. And then I also make an effort to touch base with our managers on duty and our taproom GM to ensure that I'm having those conversations, that what they care about most is on my radar and our team's radar, to ensure that we're prioritizing that and working towards driving results on those things that they care about. That does 2 things: helps us make sure we're working on the right goals, also brings them along for the ride and shows that we're invested versus things just coming down on high, so to speak. So that's, for us, that's been huge. It's just having a conversation.
How often are those conversations happening? Like, would you say what percent of the time is informal, as in we're passing in the tap room, we're going over something we simply ask, or more structured where it's a one-on-one meeting or a team meeting?
Yeah. So for us, anybody who has a direct report, and just for context, I didn't say this in the introduction. So my role is the brewery, not just the tap room. So anybody who has a direct report in our brewery should be having those conversations weekly. And it's not this massive conversation. It's just a quick weekly touch base. And a part of it is just, hey, here's what's going well. Here's what we could be improving on. How are things going? Just if you're catching up with a friend over a beer, basically the same conversation, just a little more oriented towards your job. And then I individually try and have those conversations with, as relates to our tap room, checking in informally or formally at least every couple of weeks, definitely at least every month, just to make sure that we're staying on the right track.
I mean, it's a great question. It's a great opportunity for just our taproom staff, but also our leadership, our owners, operators, to be able to be involved in our taproom staff. So I would say quarterly, we do have our taproom meetings that is all of our taproom staff, but I would say on a weekly basis, I'm always trying to check in with my team members whenever I can to try to gauge where they are and see where they want to go, either in their personal life, but also like in the tap room. I encourage them to advocate for themselves as well. And I feel like I'm a perfect example because I started as a barback and worked my way up to a bartender, and now I'm one of the taproom managers. So I think by seeing their coworkers being able to evolve with the company, it gives them a great opportunity to think, oh, wait, what do I want out of this?
Yeah, I think, regular communication and as much transparency as possible. We do a monthly all staff meeting. We actually have a Friday report that comes out that includes updates from all of our teams, because sometimes our bartenders don't know what's, the new and interesting thing that's happening on our canning line, or our sales team didn't hear about the event that we scheduled in the tap room. And so, we want to make sure all of our departments know what's going on with each other, right? Does the left hand know what the right hand is doing? A lot of the other communication is happening more informally. And I think some of those things, like, do you have things in place where are you just popping in to check in on your team, like having a chat over the side of the bar? We use Teams for a lot of regular communication to make sure that like everybody's getting the same information, doing pass downs, things like that, because we've found kind of some faults in our system before, and we're like, okay, how do we fix that? One, and it seems like such a silly thing, but our bartenders, when we were hiring for a new taproom manager, we're saying one of the things that we ended up promoting a bartender to our new taproom manager, and he had said, yeah, we've been asking for more signs that say what our Wi-Fi password is because we get asked this 900 times a day. And I said, well, who are you asking? Because that's my team. Like, by the time we left that interview, I had already requested it from our design department, and we had the signs up the next day. So that was a space where I realized, okay, our communication isn't flowing both ways in the ways that it needs to. It's not just about getting updates from like your leadership team. We have to know what's going on and what the pain points are for your tap room. It's such a small thing, but to have to answer that question 80 fewer times a day, great. It's a little bit of happiness, and then they can move on to talking about cider and talking about beer, because that's what they're there for.
Yeah,
Mara,
I completely agree. I completely agree with that, Mara. Like, making sure that communication flows both ways. And I think it's important to caveat too. We're going to talk about everything like it's going perfectly. Like, it's always a work in progress especially when talking about communication and working with teams. But having that communication flow both ways is so important, because it's exactly what Mara said. It'll make their lives easier, but also it allows people to feel heard.
Yes.
It goes such a long way, such a long way. Because if they don't feel like they're being heard and it's making their lives harder, and then that's just going to compound. And then if there's all these other external factors that have nothing to do with the brewery or the job, but it's just things in the world that are making their life harder, then you add that, like, it's going to compound on itself.
Something as simple as like, having the Wi-Fi password up there is not something I thought we'd even talk about today, but it makes so much sense, as you see with Echoed, because when you can make your team's life easier, even if it's not having to answer the same question a billion times, they're going to be happier. And Mara, you also mentioned you promoted someone within to the taproom manager position. So these little things are adding up. They're making people's experiences better. And Mara, I'd love to kind of pick your brain a little bit more on this. Like, those conversations you're having with your team, what other things are motivating them to be the best they can be for your company and your taproom?
Sure. I'm a huge proponent for education around our product. And so, we definitely, when we're getting a new beer in, particularly now because we're in the space where we don't make it, being able to share tasting notes about that, where it came from, any great stories around that, but also making sure they try it so that they can give flavor profiles to our customers. So we're trying to do regular education for our team, but then we also have an opportunity, and I love this. This is actually for all of our staff, where we have like a personal education and development fund that if, let's say, somebody found a webinar or a class or, like a summit or symposium that they wanted to attend, they can, there's little paperwork to fill out that's like, here's what I'd like to do, here's the cost of it, and here's what I intend to get out of it. They send that into our HR department for approval. And then typically we're approving everything because we want, again, people want to feel heard, and we want to, encourage interest that obviously that's related to them being better at their jobs. So being able to say like, okay, yes, we're going to provide this level of education that is provided to everyone, but like, here's something you can bring back and teach the team about. And clearly you're interested in it because you sought that out. So being able to offer something like that, it's not even, most of the requests aren't even a crazy amount of money. It might be like $100 here or $50 there. But the return that you're getting in terms of how that staff feels heard and how they're excited about something new and how they're sharing that directly with customers or with their coworkers, you can't put a price on that, honestly.
I love that. I'm totally taking notes of that, Maura. That's a great idea. And like you said, it gets people involved. It allows people to kind of have ripple effects within your taproom staff, and that ultimately comes through in customer service. So it just adds to your company culture for sure.
So Grace, for you at all of your brands, what are you seeing motivate staff these days?
It's a great question. I'm seeing a lot of different things. As I started behind the bar, I feel like I can be a bridge to the leadership team. So I always try to offer a welcoming environment for people to come to me, either with their personal issues, but also with work issues. I've always been told that I'm just a natural people person. So it's easy for me to listen, but it's often difficult to figure out how to navigate. So motivating my wonderful coworkers has been on a personal basis. I try to encourage them as much as possible and try to give them feedback. Obviously, our shopper reports come into play with that. It gives me a great opportunity to give them written feedback every time they're shopped, and kind of give them constructive criticism to be able to, because I know that they can get there. It's just giving them more education. But motivating in general it's a work in progress. I believe trying to figure out their schedule and what works well with their personal lives is key. We've learned that obviously there's not as many shift coverages when they're able to identify like, hey, wait, I have a class on this day at this time every other week, so I'm not able to put that in my schedule. But it starts with their personal lives, and with 60 employees at 3 different locations, it's a ever-growing challenge.
Jacob, anything to add to that one?
No, or yes, I say no and then immediately lead into something. Yes, I do have something to add to that. Yeah, I completely agree. Like, it's always a work in progress. And I think it's finding, again, going back to getting to know your team, what motivates them, and working on that. It could be something like Grace said, of understanding their schedule. Like, we have a couple of folks on our team who cannot work certain days, and understanding why and making sure you are accommodating that is really important. For the couple of people I have in mind, well, it's because they have kids, and that's the one day they get dedicated time with their kid and their partner. That's pretty important to them. And so like, while they may be willing to pick up that day, trying to do everything possible to not schedule for that day is going to make their life so much better and make their work life so much better as well. And then I like something Grace said about finding opportunities to praise them. This is something we always talk about here when we're talking about coaching. But so I grew up playing sports, and we always use the word coaching instead of trying to use feedback as little as possible and really coaching. It's a constant corrections, but it's not just, hey, do this better. It's also, hey, you did this really well. So that praise goes just as far, if not farther, and utilizing tools to do that. We, just like Mara, have a weekly newsletter for the entire brewery, and one of the sections in that is shout outs. So it could be anybody shouting out anybody else. And then we also leverage Secret Hopper, which, quick plug for Secret Hopper, is a great tool to see where you can improve. It's also a great tool to see where you can highlight and praise your team. That's something that we do every time that those reports come back. We get them monthly. I read through them and find opportunities to shout out the entire company. We use Slack instead of Teams, but on Slack right then and there. And it's always a great way just to motivate them. Hey, like, you're working hard and we see it, and here's the impact it's making. I think that last piece is always really important. People, of course, want to be praised, but I think then taking it to, and here's what it's doing for the business, is really important as well. So.
Jacob, I can vouch for it. I've got a 5-year-old, and praise works really, really well. So, I mean, everybody likes to feel appreciated and told that they're doing a good job. I mean, I think it's a universal way to kind of connect with people and let them feel that you have a deeper relationship with them versus looking at them just as an employee. So I absolutely love that. Now, there's lots of metrics we always want to hit in our tap rooms. I'd love to hear an example from each of you on some sort of performance-based goal or reward that you offered to your team that actually works. Like, say, hey, you score whatever on a Secret Hopper report this month, we're going to give you this, or something that actually worked, or maybe it's a go beer contest. What's something that worked to motivate your team?
I'll start. I'll bring up the Secret Hopper as well, again, because it's been a great metric for us. I've been able to see actually our scores increase by being able to provide a monthly feedback, written feedback, to each of the coworkers that are being shopped. It's a great way to coach, as well as kind of identify either stuck points or ask questions of, how did you see this going? Or may I get some feedback from your point of view rather than the customers, or in addition to the customers? It gives them opportunities to either advocate for themselves or also just explain, hey, I was having a bad day, this, and this happened. It's a real world situation. So it's nice to know exactly where they're coming from so we can grow upon that. But being able to offer bonuses from those reports specifically has been incredible. We have a certain criteria that we go by. If they hit all their key points, one of the bartenders as well as one of our barbacks will also get a bonus per report. So some of our coworkers make an extra $300 a month if they're able to hit all their metrics. So it's been very responsive, or we're getting great responses from that.
Money definitely motivates. I love that. Maura, how about you?
Yeah, our taproom manager likes to say that our bar team is coin operated. So, and I think that resonates, right? You know, they're here to do a job, and it makes a big difference. But one of the things that we do, you know, we have our all staff meetings monthly, and we do pick employee of the month. That's nominated by our leadership team. So none of us are eligible for this. Every single one of our bartenders and our taproom manager at some point has received that, and it does come with cash, which is great. You know, we're working a little bit more on what hitting certain metrics can mean as far as you know, bonuses for the team. I know that they love to get together and do karaoke. I know that they love to get together and go to Mariners games. I'm working on a plan for hitting certain metrics that will give everyone the Sunday off and send them to a Sunday Mariners game together. So we have some folks on our leadership team who will take over the bar on that day so that they can go and play for a bit. But yeah, that's always really a work in progress. but also, you know, a lot of that time too, I think to Jacob's point about we use our shout out channel all the time. I like the shout outs to be really specific so that it's, you know, uses that person's name, says like, I saw you do this specifically, and this was amazing. Even sometimes just for things that are really part of the day-to-day, like, oh, I know you picked up this person's shift, but like that meant that this person didn't have to do a double or didn't have to work 6 days that week, to show that they're like really caring for each other. I also take a lot of anytime we get a 5-star review on Google, Yelp, anything like that, those are going in the shout out channel, because then it's I think honestly even better. It's not just feedback or praise that's coming from us. Like, hey, your customers see this too. So all of those things I think ultimately add up.
No, I'd love to kind of flip it around. We try all these things to motivate our staff and get buy-in, but I'd love for each of you to share an example of something you tried that just didn't work. Like you thought offering a pizza party would get everybody to sell 100 crowlers on a Saturday, but no, it didn't play out that way. Like what's something you tried that just didn't play out? And I know all of you are doing a really good job of asking your team what they want from these initiatives, but is there anything you can think of that would fit into this category?
Hey, we've probably all learned the hard way as well. You want to know what does not work is offering beer or brewery merch or swag. I've done that before, and that is a great way to get zero.
Do you want another work shirt? Of course you do. Right.
Yeah. You want this hat that you already could get? Yeah. So we don't do that. But have definitely done that in the past, and have been met with just like, why would this motivate us whatsoever? So yeah, things like that where they could already get at a pretty affordable rate, or things that they're surrounded by all day long already, like definitely aren't going to motivate them. That's where we've shifted towards trying to figure out with our managers what will motivate the team, and even the managers, like what will motivate you, so that we can make sure we're setting up accordingly.
I think that's a great question to ask yourself as well as a part of a leadership team, is like, what actually motivates you? Let's try to think outside the box, but also look inward of what would motivate me. Something we've learned in our tap rooms, we partner with a lot of local companies. We trade gift cards pretty frequently. So we were offering incentives and by form of gift card to different companies around the city, but we heard feedback from some coworkers that, you know what, I'm not even using this, so it feels like I didn't receive anything. So we eventually just ended up asking, would you rather have a gift card here or one at our tap room where they receive a discount? And generally it's to our tap room. So we've just pivoted just to our tap room gift cards, but we also offer the opportunity to hear, you know what, where do you normally go, or where would you like to be, or how would you like to be compensated for this reward?
We're going to dive back into that in a minute, Grace, because I kind of tease up the next question. But Maura, I'd love to hear an example of something that just didn't work for Seattle Cider Tap Room.
I honestly have to echo what Jacob said. I think that's similar. You know, we do have we give actually all of our staff a gift card every month that they can use for purchasing merch or purchasing product. And then we have, you know, free growlers every day, as many short pours as you want to take. And then, you know, really great discounts for when you bring in friends and family. But those are just like baseline benefits. And so that's not necessarily like a value add to add further incentive to do better, to do more. And so like, that's just something like we give freely. That's a baseline. So, you know, I'm pretty open and honest about places where we have a lot of room for growth, but I don't know that I have much else to add to that one in particular. So
well, that was good insight.
I'm trying to find the perfect things, but yeah.
We're always learning.
Yes.
No, Grace, back to you. You mentioned that the same rewards are not going to work for everyone. So my question for you then is, like, how are you individualizing goals and their corresponding rewards? Are you doing some things sometimes and says some team members might only work 1 shift a week? They deserve to be recognized and motivated too. Like, how are you kind of balancing the rock stars who are always being recognized for selling the most whatevers on a Saturday afternoon versus those who might be showing the greatest improvements but might not be at that all-star level?
We definitely have that range for sure. For the people that are maybe working one shift a week, but also get a bonus because they happen to be on a secret hopper report, they still get a bonus. They still get a shout out, but it's also, well, what encourages them to either work harder or work more shifts. That one's still work in progress. I would say just on the individual basis is like Jacob said, just asking them individually, you know what, like what motivates you? It's a good conversation to have, but it's also a nice way to learn a little bit more about where they're coming from. Um, I've learned that just having an open door policy with myself and being a bridge to our leadership team has been very fortunate. I have learned that from that, I get quite an array of conversations coming my way. Either it's shift coverage or something, they're having car troubles or they're having troubles at home, which then leads to me just having another personal connection with them. And that works down the line where maybe there is a time that I need to coach them where they know I'm coming from a personable place. It's not trying to come from a leadership role. It's coming like, hey, I'm a human talking to a fellow human. So please know that I see you. So I think maintaining that open door policy has been a great benefit.
Jacob, at NoDa, are you all doing anything to have individual goals for team members versus just overall initiatives where top performer gets recognized?
Yeah, so each department, or in this case, the taproom as a whole, has a scorecard that's checked in on weekly, and those are just like high-level performance metrics. So checks opened, revenue, percentage of go beer, et cetera, things like that. And at the individual level, yes, there are goals that each person has, and we don't touch on those formally as often, but that's that annual review process that I mentioned we're currently going through. That's where those typically get fleshed out, and it's kind of check-ins throughout the year. But on the taproom side, outside of like taproom wide competitions, we don't have anything where it's like manager A is specifically being gold for this, manager B is specifically being gold for that. Rather, it's, hey, let's figure out what motivates y'all and then have that bubble up to the larger thing.
Now, Mara, I'd love to pick your brain on this. I mean, you've talked about how you had the employee in your taproom work their way up to, I believe, taproom manager, or was it assistant manager, one or the other? So, yeah, it's awesome. So, like, how did you all help them make that leap? What about the environment at your company really got them comfortable enough and trained enough and confident enough that they were able to go from point A to point B?
Yeah, I think as a company, we've really tried to establish a culture where we want to promote internally first. So there's certainly been a precedent for that. We see it all the time through a number of different departments. It hasn't happened a ton in our tap room, and that's just because we haven't had a lot of turnover. So we came to a space where our taproom manager at the time left to take a job actually down the street with one of our partners that we work with. We still see him all the time, but he, liked that schedule a little bit better, and that opened up an opportunity for one of our bartenders to apply from within. He had the full support of our leadership team, took some time to speak to a number of people about kind of some of the things that they want to see, improve in the tap room, some things that they're already doing really well. And I think it was a lot about that support, right? And we talk all the time, like we're in communication every day that he's working, figuring out how to make things better for his team, looking at the things that they're doing really well. It's interesting too, actually, he came to us as a bartender without having any bartending experience. And, the other aspect of that was he had the full support of his bartending team, that they were like, this is the man for the job. And it was just really great to hear that he had the support of all of his bartenders. They've still been incredibly supportive of him. And it's just wonderful to see that.
Did he come from a hospitality background at all, or do you think just coming in without any experience kind of made him an open slate, ready to soak it all in and really not have any ideas of how things typically would go?
Yeah, he came in with the right attitude. Here's a guy who can absolutely talk to anyone. He was really interested in learning all about the cidery. The brewery at the time has learned a ton about beer and cider, the processes for how they're made. And yeah, I mean, he can talk to anybody. He's charming, he's funny, he's really easily approachable, which I think is super helpful for our bar team. They're not afraid to come to him to ask him, is this something we can fix, or how do we get around this, or here's a problem that we're having that like just needs to be dealt with. And I think that that's great. So yeah, I mean, the stars aligned with that, but also he came in with the right attitude. And I think that a lot of service and hospitality, those aspects, you can teach somebody about how cider is made and what the flavor profiles are like, or what to recommend to a customer. But ultimately, it had so much to do with just him coming in with the right attitude and just being ready for anything.
Yeah, and I think that is so critical. Like, you can't teach that.
Yeah.
You can teach all the other things about cider, about doing the job, but if they don't have the right attitude, if they aren't passionate, like, well, then that's tough. When we are bringing on new folks, we similarly try to always promote within, but we do have to bring on new people from time to time, and the culture fit and their attitude almost outweighs more than their experience. Because again, like, it's really tough to change who someone is and how they approach things, but it's pretty easy to teach them how to do something and then have them grow into a role. Our lead brewer started as a bartender with us years ago, and when she joined, she had zero desire to brew, but just had the right attitude and became really, really passionate about what we do, and has worked her way through basically the entire organization to eventually be where she is now. And it's for all the reasons that you said that you can't teach. She's learned all the things you can learn of how to brew beer when she was just pouring it before. And it's been awesome to see her just grow.
Love that.
And we've talked about how, opportunity is totally a motivator. And you two both gave great examples of how people work their way up with your team. But speaking in Taproom, we've got these people who've started as bartenders, worked their way up to in the management level. How do you keep them motivated? It's a little bit different than your servers, your bartenders. How do you keep your leadership actually motivated to be the best they can be? What's working?
I'll specifically speak up as one of those people. I started as a barback, and now I'm one of the taproom managers. I'm personally motivated by finding missed opportunities or finding moments in the business where I can offer my assistance or offer my insight. I feel highly motivated being able to create processes or figure out where the stuck points are. Being able to communicate with my team is a huge thing for me because I learn a lot from them. They're on the front line. They're working mostly with our customer base, so it's good to hear their input as well. And it gives them an opportunity to share where they're coming from. Feeling heard, as Jacob has mentioned, is a big thing, and it has big ripple effects. It also plays both sides where they're able to come to us and come to me when they want to feel heard, and because if they're receiving that consistently, they'll come back and bring either their concerns or their suggestions. It's really, I pride myself on having an open door policy and being able to encourage them to advocate for what they see would be more successful than what the current status is.
Yeah. Grace, earlier you mentioned that some of your taproom staff receive up to bonuses of $300 or so a month. Like, financial wise, is there anything you're incentivizing your management with?
I mean, there are a lot of incentives. The owners of the brewery also, there's a lot of different things. There's either, recently I got to utilize one of they're also doing like an Airbnb house. So it's called the Getaway house. It's down in this lovely wooded forest area down in Southern Ohio, where I recently got to utilize that for a friend's birthday party. So they have a lot of resources to be able to use as incentives. Either it's being able to take our Getaway van, which is an old 70s camper van, to a music festival, or being able to use our delivery vans when they're moving so they don't have to pay for a U-Haul. So it's just being able to inform our staff like, hey, these are opportunities if you are reliable, if you are confident in your position, if you're able to take on a little bit more or even be willing to add more coverage in the schedule. These are all things that show us that you're putting into the company what we would like to reward as well, and we see you. So I think there's a lot of rewards, some that I don't even know about. So from the leadership, it's perspective. It's something to tap into, but it's also just I'm learning as well.
Awesome, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, something we try to do is make sure people are empowered to do their job and to make positive change, meaning giving them the tools they need to do that. So being transparent with business performance so that they can take action. And then rather than always saying, hey, this is what we should do, you're on the front lines. What do you guys think we should do? How should we handle this problem? Here's the thing we're working towards. How do you think we should get there? Candidly, that's been a little bit of a shift over the last couple of years from the kind of trying to give them just enough and let them figure it out versus really being much more transparent and being really empowering them, because when they're in the role for a reason, and it's to be leaders and to be managers. So if you don't allow them to do that, then what's the point? So giving them everything they need to be successful in that role goes a long way for motivation, for happiness. At least that's what we found.
Mara, how about out in Seattle? What are you doing? You got your people in the management positions they were looking for. How are you keeping them there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's along the same lines here too. We, excuse me, we have, our company mission and vision and what we call like our living values, which are core values for the company. And one of them that we talk a lot about within the context of culture is entrepreneurship, which, in short is basically run it like you own it. I will likely never open my own cidery or tap room, but love that I get to do these things every day. Like, right, this is a get to. I don't have to. No one's forcing me to be here, but I get to. And in that same vein, we give a lot of autonomy, both to our leadership team, but also, to our bartenders, to that team to come up with ideas for events or, talk to us about places we should be marketing or who we should be partnering with. Nonprofit partners that, we do a lot of community giving and have a ton of events where we bring those partners in and, donate portions of the proceeds from the day or have certain events. And we want to partner with folks that like our bar team is passionate about. So that's coming, from our taproom manager. It's coming from our bartenders. There's a lot of opportunity for giving autonomy to your team. And by, your leadership team saying, great, if this is something that you care about, then we will show that we care too. And we will give you that space, that runway to make things happen with it. It goes a really long way. And that is that like entrepreneurship. Like if it were yours and you could do anything, and this were yours to run it this way, is this how you would do it? And there's a lot of times that we can allow for that to be done. Certain things, got to focus on the needs of the business. Absolutely. But a lot of times those things are really innately in line and we can make that work for folks. So, yeah.
And something Mara said, this is going to be a pivot to an extent, but bear with me. Something she said made me think about something that Andrew, we talked about last time I saw you in person, which was if you have teammates, specifically managers, but teammates in general, but especially managers who aren't aligned with the values and aren't aligned with the culture of the business and brewery, like it's tough. Like you got to get them out of there. Like one bad apple can ruin the bunch. And we experienced this firsthand this past year with a couple individuals who were just really souring the taproom, both in terms with our team culture, and then that was translating down to the customer. And we saw that both from just talking to our team, but also, again, shout out to Secret Hoppers, some things we were seeing there. And the moment, not exaggerating, literally the day that we unfortunately had to let those folks go, the culture completely shifted. It was like a breath of fresh air in the room. People were coming to us and being like, hey, like, it's going to be so much better now. We're really excited. This this person was doing these things that was bringing it all down. And it goes such a long way. It sucks. No one, no matter how poorly they're doing, I don't want to let anybody go. That's their livelihood. But you got to think about the entire team and the business. And that person can make such a larger negative impact by keeping them on than the opposite.
It's essentially the flip side of the title for today. It's demotivating your taproom staff by having those people around who just have that negative attitude that doesn't represent the workplace culture that you want to build.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about strategy today. We've kind of leaned on, the things that are motivating your team and how you're doing it. But I'd love to dive into the data side and hear, like, what data are you sharing with your team with regards to the things you really want them to do and to understand, how successful your taproom space is? Are there any specific metrics you all, whether they're in the weekly reports or you have them at your meetings, like what are you typically sharing?
Yeah. So we have a scorecard that our taproom managers review weekly. And it covers, I'm trying to remember it line by line, revenue, then breaks that out by different package formats, breaks it out by check average, and then to-go beer as percentage as well. I think that's it. So we try and keep it relatively short. Oh, and then there's COGS as well, so that they can understand just general profit of what's being pushed. So try and keep it generally short, but impactful, and so that they can understand what's driving. And it's not just here are the numbers, have a good day. It's hey, why do we think this is what it is? Again, you guys are on the front lines. What do we think is driving this? And there's usually some really good insight that comes out of it. And our taproom managers are almost never working at the same time. And so it's interesting to hear, oh, well, this happens Saturday morning, and then this happens Saturday night or Sunday morning, and just having them feed off of one another. And the ideas that come out of that are usually really useful. And again, empowering them with the data and bring them along with the conversation and the resolution is really impactful for motivation and actually getting to an actionable thing. Because if I, who am not in the day-to-day taproom 24/7, say, hey, here's what I think we should do. This is going to solve the revenue problem. They're like, cool. It may actually, or it may not. But if we have an entire collaborative discussion about it and they're bought in, well, then whatever resolution we reach, chances are they're going to be excited about implementing it because it was as much their idea as it was anyone else's.
And you share that data with your entire taproom staff?
We share it with we're open sharing it with the taproom staff if anyone asks, because we, through praising or through the shout out channel, do share some of that, just due to the nature of how we send that report out. We do it just to the managers on a weekly basis, but it's not necessarily a secret to the rest of the team. We have a quarterly meeting where we do run through that in greater detail. We just had that this past Monday, where it's the taproom staff and everyone else sees all that data and much more on the brewery as a whole.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Jacob.
Yeah.
May I ask, Jacob, how do you comprise of these scorecards? Are they mostly pulled like from your POS, or how do you
pulled from the POS? So we pull them from the POS and throw them into just a Google sheet. We are working to have it be a more automated report. It's not terribly time intensive, but it is manual, which takes a little bit of time and also opens up room for error. But we're trying to get it. We're switching from one POS to another, and one of the reasons is the reporting functionality of this new one will hopefully allow us to do a little bit more of that without having to just drop it in a Google Doc.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Grace, what about you? I'd love to kind of learn the metrics you're using across your locations.
It's very similar. That's why I asked. We are able to, since each of our bartenders has like their individual logins, it's very easy to see who's having more checks, who's opening more tabs, who's selling the most to-go beer. So with that, we're able to implement some bonus structures, but also try to incentivize them by giving them like sales quotas of like, hey, last week or last month, you sold 4 cases of to-go beers. This month, how can we get you to sell 6 or 7 cases? I'm constantly reminding them of just brand awareness. We are able to distribute through a multitude of groceries here in Central Ohio and throughout the state, but with our new products on the shelves, either RTDs or the THC beverages, it's great to show that brand awareness throughout. Each brand feels like it's its own business, but when we're able to have the bartenders provide some education to our customers, it brings it all together, and a customer can realize, oh wait, you also own that. Oh, you also own that. So it kind of comes back to the education part of getting our taproom staff involved in from the get-go of, hey, this is what it tastes like, this is how it's made, and then getting their feedback of what they personally feel from a consumer base, to kind of build off of that.
When it comes to like taproom data and metrics, like often we tell our teams, you need to do this, you need to do that. And the question might be like, well, why am I going to do this? How am I going to see the benefit from it? And you all are doing a great job of motivating your teams, but the data that I'm looking at sometimes, it really, really fascinates me, because we have these ideas that if you do this action, like ask someone to take some to go, they're going to be more likely to say yes. But when you have the data behind it, it just really backs that habit you want to build. Like when the to-go beer cider side of things, we see that taproom staff only ask that question like 1 out of 5 times. And if you don't ask that question, Mara, I think the data is probably the same when we first had a panel in person years and years ago. It's unfortunately the same, but what we see is, when they don't ask that question, the guest is going to make the purchase on their own 1 out of 10 times. But when you say, hey, Jacob, do you want to take that lager home with you? The guest says yes, nearly 50% of the time. So simply just showing, hey, if you do these little things like asking these questions, it's all about asking these questions, then you see these results that are going to benefit your paycheck, because you're going to make more money and you're going to make more tips. So I think, kind of showing the why behind the action can be really important sometimes. And go ahead.
Oh, I was sorry. I just could not agree more. We, in the last year, have expanded our offerings well beyond just beer. We've always had, obviously, beer and then limited cider and wine. We've added a cocktail program, expanded our NAs heavily, launched THC. And for each of those, that's a lot of change. I can't remember if it was Grace or Mara commented on just how much change that has been the last year for them as well. It was a lot for our team. We always try and start with the why. Stealing a line from Simon Sinek, it's a great book or short TED Talk. And that goes such a long way, because it's exactly what you said. For all those changes, it's, hey, this is going to help the brewery and help you. We have people coming in. Here's the data. We have people coming in and they're not wanting just beer anymore. We added this thing, and that's going to take the check average to this, which is going to take the tip average to that. And it goes such a long way for getting buy-in and understanding. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, that was fantastic. But Mara, I'd love to kind of hear what data you're looking at and sharing with your team.
For sure. We're absolutely looking at check averages. We do a heat map of dates where we can see, okay, like this was a particularly slow Sunday. What was it on this Sunday where we saw a huge spike? We just opened our own kitchen recently, like I think 3 weeks ago, which has been kind of wild. And so, obviously that's increased our check average, but I can't even tell you, Andrew, how many times I have used that data point about asking whether or not somebody wants to go product after they're, as they're checking out, as they're leaving. And we're using that same kind of idea now that we're running our own kitchen around, oh, do you want to grab a bite to eat with, as you're ordering your first drink? Because our kitchen is new, and it used to be, an order separate where we had a third party who was running our kitchen out of the brick and mortar space. Now it's an opportunity for us to reintroduce our customers, our guests to, like, we're running our own kitchen. And then that gives additional talking points. Like, we're making some of these menu items with cider here. Everything's made in-house. We're sourcing locally. Like, how do you add those talking points, and how do you get somebody to stay for maybe one more drink or one side of fries? And it makes a huge difference. So check averages, that's a big one that, our staff care about, as well as like tip percentage. Did you have a particularly phenomenal day? Absolutely. Like, what was different about this day where your averages for the day were at 25% versus this day where it was at 19? What changed? What, were you understaffed and y'all were just barely keeping up? Or, what was the difference? Maybe sometimes it's just the crowd, and sometimes it's hard to like pinpoint exactly what those what that like it factor was. But if you're just looking at it regularly over time, saying, okay, like we had an event this day that brought in people, we had music, so they stayed longer for the full set. So our check averages were longer on these days when we have music. Great. Does it make sense to do that more often? So if you're using those data points to inform how you're running the rest of your business, that's ultimately benefiting your bartenders, because they're going to leave at the end of the day having more tips because they had twice as many customers on a night that you scheduled music.
I love that you mentioned tip percentage, because it truly is one of my favorite metrics, because it really corresponds directly with the level of engagement your team's giving. And, I don't know if we've actually said the word thus far, but we're in the hospitality industry. And the more you can connect with the people, the more they're going to feel connected to you, the more they're going to spend, the more they're going to return. It just benefits everybody. So I love that you mentioned that metric. And as we wind down, there's, a person we haven't talked about today, and that's each of you. So I'd love to kind of know what's motivating you to do your best, and how are you furthering your knowledge to become better leaders, whether it's reading books like you mentioned, Jacob, perhaps, or whether you're trying to get industry certifications, going to events. What are you doing to better yourselves? So many head nods, but I want some answers.
Silence.
I'll start. So I could just fangirl all day about our leadership team. I work with just some of the most genuinely caring and authentic humans, and honestly, I love all of my coworkers. And recently, we've been having a lot of conversations around servant leadership, and about how how do we ease some of the pain points for our team when we're going through so many changes. And everyone is seeing that with our tap room, and we're all trying to, band together and support through this. We just opened a kitchen, no small feat. Because we just opened a kitchen, we actually annually, we don't do a holiday party because it's a busy time of year and we're hosting other people's parties. So we usually party in March or April. And this year we ended up, we thought we would do something special with our kitchen, and our leadership team cooked a big dinner for our entire staff. Took apart the entire tap room, had one big long table, served this amazing meal that we made in-house for 40 people, because we let people bring their plus ones. And so, I'm just learning a lot all the time from the other people that I work with. I attend webinars like this. I'm learning a ton, both from Jacob and Grace, and Andrew. I am always reading your newsletters that come out. These are day-to-day things. But I think that there's a lot that can be learned from your peer group, folks that you see wow, you're doing a really great job with that. Come grab a beer with me sometime and let's talk about what you're doing to motivate your team, and just kind of that info share. But yeah, just having a really great team that I can pull info from. Sorry, that was kind of long-winded. I know we're wrapping up.
Grace, your turn.
I'd say that I know that I can't pour from an empty cup. So anything that I'm able to do to kind of refill me is ultimately going to have great ripple effects for what I'm able to provide as a leader in the company. So currently I am taking a pottery class. I'm also taking a bookmaking class because I know that my true passion is art, but also being able to be just a nice, I've been told multiple times, but a shining light for my team is, I've seen the ripple effects from that. I've been able to maybe just have a discussion, just person to person, with one of my coworkers, that I could also see the impact from just being able to provide time and space for them. So being able to connect on a personal level is huge for me, just as a human, but also within my leadership role, I know that it benefits the entire team when I'm able to make space and time for them, which comes from my social battery. So being in the tap room as much as I am, or all 3 tap rooms as much as I am, is definitely draining. It can be draining. So I personally know for myself, to help everybody grow is you know what, you got to refuel yourself first. And I think also being the youngest of 5 kids in my family has also shown me oh, it's a team effort, and everybody's got to do their part to take care of themselves, so that it can be a cohesive team.
Because if you're not taking care of yourself, it's going to rub off on the rest of the experience.
Yeah, and if they know me as the person that I really love to put forward, and I'm not able to do that because I'm not being in tune with my own personal needs, it definitely it feels unbalanced. It's like, wait, what's wrong with them? And makes them question, wait, is something wrong? Something wrong? Like, if you can keep your head on straight and be able to come clear-minded and ready to work, I think that's the best way to go.
No, that's a great one, Grace. Well, like many of us in the industry, we wear lots of different hats, and Jacob just got pulled aside. I think a fire alarm went off, so I hope everything's okay. But that means now there's just two of you, and we're going to end with one final question. And the insight you all have dropped today is fantastic. I've learned a ton as well. I love the responses you all have put out there and the advice you've given to others to just be better at motivating your staff. So people, when they listen to stuff like this, it's a lot of information overload sometimes. Just like when you're telling your team to do something, you can't tell them to do 10 things at once. You got to really hone in on what you want to see growth at. So Mara, we'll start with you on this one. Like, what's one thing you hope people take away from today and actually take back to their tap room?
Making sure that communication is flowing both ways. Sit down with your team, schedule a formal meeting or have an informal chat, do a quick rose versus thorn. What's one thing we're doing great? What's one pain point you have? One-on-one, take it bite by bite, but just make sure that your communication's flowing both ways so that you are getting everything to your team that they need to be hearing and that you're hearing from them too.
Good one. I think Jacob would agree. No, Grace, what you got?
I'd probably say just reflect on the points that we spoke about that may have sounded louder than the others, because that's hitting into your true self, either something that's missing, either something you're doing well, or something that you want to spend more time on. I think our brains try to attract those things that we're trying to problem solve, because our brain is an amazing problem solver. But also screaming into the void also helps sometimes too. Just taking time to really guttural scream. I can say when I was down in the woods, that definitely helps. So just a fun one.
Screaming in the woods. I feel like that's a good bookend to Jacob's, 3 fingers story earlier, which we'll get later. But this has been fantastic. I've learned so much today and hope everybody who's tuned in or watching after the fact does as well. I'm always up for a conversation. I love speaking taproom, talking taproom, learning from you. So feel free to reach out. If there's any data you'd like me to dive into for you, definitely reach out as well. Now, Grace, for anyone interested in connecting with you or following the brands that you work for, how can they do so?
Feel free to connect with me by email, grace@seventhsunbrewing.com. I'm always available.
Mara?
Same. Mara@seattlecidercompany.com. It's Maura. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can follow all of our crazy events at Seattle Cider Taproom on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. So yeah, hit me up.
I want to see some collab art from you two someday.
I know, right? I'm seriously, I was like, I gotta email Grace after this. I want to see.
So we're not going to have him involved in that portion of it, though. Well, everybody, thanks for being here today. And Jacob, Grace, and Mara, it was great having this conversation with you. Looking forward to piping someday soon. Cheers. Thanks again.
Cheers.
Thank you so much, Andrew.